I'm Algenon Cash, and you're locked in. Welcome back. Thank you all for joining me. Another great episode for you today. You oftentimes hear me talk so much about the elections and what's going on with politics and in the world of politics, and it's been a crazy election season. But the election season has come to an end, and now we're in the middle of the holiday season. So this is a time of the year where more people are starting to focus on their families and expressing gratitude for having such a great year. I know some of you may be feeling like this hasn't been such a great year. 2020, everyone's just ready to get out of it. But I would challenge you all to reflect back on this year and really try to think about what you're most grateful for. There's always some rays of sunlight even in the darkness, so you just sometimes got to search for them. But this is a great time of the year to just sort of think about what you're grateful for and what you're how God has blessed you. And again, as I mentioned, it's also a good time to connect with family. Also a great time for food. So if you're in my audience, then you know I love great food, and this is the best time of the year for great food. I think this is an appropriate time to let you know as well, since we're talking about the holiday season, is this particular episode today is sponsored by J&S Cafeteria, located in High Point, North Carolina. And they do have holiday meals this year. So if you don't want to do the cooking, you want to give grandma and mom a day off, this is a perfect opportunity to reach out to J&S Cafeteria. They have holiday meals to go in bulk. So if you are, now remember, Governor Cooper said you can't have more than 10 people in your house. So you can't be buying too much food. But if you don't want to cook for those 10 people, you can go to J&S Cafeteria, 5835 Summit Drive over in High Point, North Carolina. When you call them, make sure you tell them Algenon Cash sent you. They may give you a special deal. So I've got some really interesting guests here today. One is a reoccurring guest that you know very well, and the other one is a new guest, new friend of the show that's going to be locking in. Briana Conner, who is a news anchor with WXII Channel 12 News, and her sister, Fahren Conner, who is actually based in San Diego, California. She's a small business owner and a fashion designer. I've got Briana and Fahren on the line today. How you ladies doing? Thank y'all for locking in with me.
Hi, doing well.
Yeah, thanks for having us today.
Yeah, so you two are sisters, located right now completely on opposite sides of the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fahren, as I mentioned, is out in San Diego, and Briana is here in North Carolina. As I mentioned, you can catch her on WXI Channel 12 on a daily basis, Monday through Friday. You know, Fahren, I want to start out with you because my audience probably doesn't always get to hear about what's going on the West Coast. We're in COVID-19. We hear about some of the cases that you all have been experiencing out in California. Describe for my audience here in North Carolina, what's going on out in San Diego right now?
Yeah, so it's probably a little bit different than it is in North Carolina, being in California and on the West Coast. California itself has, I believe, joined an alliance with Oregon and Washington, being on the same page on exactly how to deal with COVID, kind of the same rules, same laws on the entire West Coast. We have different stages. So unfortunately right now, California is in the purple stage. San Diego had been pretty blessed that we skirted that stage for quite a while, just with how our demographics are, how San Diego plays out. We're a large city, but we're so spread out, and where our downtown is, it just helps our numbers stay fairly low, especially if you want to compare areas like LA, which has so many people, and areas like San Francisco, same thing. But right now it's a little rough. We're all, have it pretty rough California wide. So we're blessed to live in a state that is good weather 99.9% of the year. So outdoor eating is very real for us. Heat lamps are good. It makes a difference. It doesn't snow. So it's just our new normal right now, right? People matter. So it's, just doing what you can so that we can just get through this all together. We're all in this together.
So what kind of restrictions does your governor have you under? I know here we are not allowed to gather. You can only gather up to 10 people. That's including in your home. And then here this past Monday, our Governor Cooper actually imposed a new restriction where even if you're in your house, If you have anyone in your house that you don't live with, you have to wear a mask even at home. Is it similar out in California? Is it a little tighter or is it a little looser?
It's a little tighter in some areas and looser in other areas. So we can't do gatherings more than 10 people, but they're not necessarily policing that in a way. That's the directive from the governor down, and we're expected to follow it, but it's not being strictly enforced. We don't have to wear masks inside of our own home, but we do have to wear masks outside of the home. So in grocery stores, in public areas, you'll see people wear them outside, but it's not as common, but everywhere inside. Gyms have to operate outside. Restaurants have to operate outside. Before we hit the purple tier, there was a capacity level. So somewhere between 10, 15% indoor capacity. Now it's all eating outdoors. Some businesses are trying to push back a little bit. So, they're saying our numbers aren't coming from the gyms. They're not coming from businesses. They're very, very low, I almost think it's under 1%. Don't quote me on that, but it's substantially low. A lot of our numbers are coming from people gathering together in their home, people gathering together, hanging out with people who aren't in their immediate family, who live within their home. So that's where we're getting most of our COVID cases from, as well as just like other areas, nursing homes. So,
So
yeah.
similar to what we're going through, but maybe slightly nuanced. So this is a week, right? Like the holiday season is kicking off. This is a week that you and Briana, would typically be migrating home to Texas for some good food and some reconnecting with family and those kind of things. So Briana, tell us, what does it feel like to not be en route to Texas to see Fahren in person, not through Zoom? And then obviously I know your parents are located in Houston, Texas as well.
Yeah, a little bit of context that a lot of people outside of my industry necessarily wouldn't even know for your viewers. Working in news, you tend to work a lot of holidays. So I've actually, maybe in the 10 years I've been in this business, I don't know that I've been at home with my family on Thanksgiving Day. We usually really prioritize Christmas because that's when my grandmother comes from Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where my sister comes from, California. I think we were looking at this year differently because we hadn't really had a chance to link up at all of us, before the holidays like we usually would. So we were coming into the Thanksgiving holiday thinking, okay, this year we're going to try to see if we can get together at Thanksgiving and Christmas so that we can just have that time together like we've been unable to because of the pandemic. So I think, one, it's really disappointing that we can't. My mom and dad got us all on the phone and kind of broke the news. They're both 65 plus. So they're in that high risk category because of their age. My mom deals with some hypertension, high blood pressure there. So, but basically once they laid it out, being that Houston's got a lot of cases, my sister would be traveling in from an area that's dealing with COVID cases. We're certainly dealing with COVID spikes. Once you lay out the case for our family, it just didn't make sense. So it's disappointing, but we're trying to deal with it as best we can. Wouldn't you say, Fair?
Absolutely, I agree.
You mentioned your parents are in, obviously in Houston where there's a high number of cases. What are your parents doing right now? What's life for them right now, day to day? I mean, in terms of trying to keep themselves safe and not get exposed to the virus in an area where it's probably one of the hottest spots in the country right now.
I think our mom is funny.
Yeah, mom is she takes instruction well. Dad's a little bit more difficult. So I think what we have probably going on in their house is when it comes to groceries, errands, the essential things like that, my dad's the one leaving the house consistently to get those things and those essentials. I think mom's at home the majority of the time if she doesn't have to run up to her church office to do some things. I think they're having small church services on Sundays, but like California, I think they're blessed with the fact that they're in Houston, that the weather is pretty mild, even around November, December. So they are able to do some things outdoors that here in the triad, we're not going to be able to do for much longer.
And do you all have any actual family members that you know that have contracted COVID or had issues with COVID-19? I mean, any immediate family members that you know of, or?
No, we've been really blessed. None of our family members have contracted COVID.
No, that's great. I mean, any close relative, I mean, any kind of close friends, I mean, especially like down in, I mean, again, with your parents living in Texas, do they have friends that have had to deal with the virus?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom's the main pastor at the church where my mom works has his brother came down with COVID, and their family, because the way that it is, like Fahren was saying, it's somebody in the household gets it, then it spreads within the family. So that's what a lot of where these most recent cases are coming from, I think, all across the country. So that happened. And then honestly, this pandemic became really real for me actually in like the spring. I remember it was May, I believe, when I found out that a good friend of mine from college was taking care of her grandmother who was elderly, and she came down with COVID, wound up in the hospital in Houston on a ventilator, and died in the first wave of this pandemic. So I think that really happening set the tone a lot for how our family has responded and how seriously we've taken this, because early on in this, we started knowing people who were dying.
You know, also with the holidays, not only just good food and great family comes around this season, but this also tends to be a season where we shop a lot more. We're out buying gifts for our family and friends and doing that type of thing. Fahren, just describe how that looks for you this season in terms of holiday shopping and getting out into some of the stores this year.
Online shopping, which I've always liked anyway, is
Yeah.
very real this year. I don't like large crowds to begin with. And this, like you said, a lot of people go out, they're shopping. I have had to run to the mall from time to time just to return things. And in California, they're doing really well. So most of our malls are outdoors. So you have the stores themselves are indoors, but to get to them, it's all open air, all outside. We do have to wear masks at the mall, and there's a limited number of people that can go in each store. So you'll see lines with markers outside of each store, and a lot of the stores have changed their store layout so there's more space for people to walk through. So people don't crowd around one area. They have markers on what rows you can walk down and which ones you can walk up. So they've done a really good job. For me, I'm still online shopping though.
So you're an Amazon woman. Okay, I got you. I think Briana, you're a big Amazon fan as well. So there's always some packages coming in. But you know, I want to talk a little bit about the holiday travel component. So I know that many people, I've read several articles where they talk about it's not particularly unsafe to get on an airplane. I mean, because you do have great ventilation and, you know, it is a limited crowd and you can social distance and wear masks and do those kind of things. But the real issue is the airports and traveling through the airports and dealing with that environment. Now, you all did get together as a family earlier in the year while COVID was still going on. Explain to us how that worked. I mean, what was it like to actually have to travel down to Texas? And of course, now it wasn't as a hot spot like it is right now, but the virus and the pandemic was still going on when you all had to get together earlier in the year.
I've probably traveled the most out of my entire family. I've flown to Houston twice. So May, so the second month of COVID, where it was really hard, I flew to Houston and hung out with my parents for 2 weeks, and then Briana came the weekend before we left. Correct, Bri?
Yep.
Okay. So I, just like you said, the airplanes themselves incredibly safe, right? There's no middle seats, social distancing, you have to wear your mask. And the really great thing about, they load the airplane from the front to the back. So it's really awesome because people aren't passing each other.
No, it's flipped. They started doing them from the back to the front.
Yes.
Yeah. It took a pandemic for us to figure out that's the smartest way to actually onboard an airplane.
It really is. And then I fly Delta a lot, and they give you hand sanitizer, they give you hand wipes to wipe down your seat. They have everything prepackaged, bottled water, snacks in a package. The flight attendants wear gloves, they have on masks as well. It's been a really great experience for me. And even in the airport, so Houston Airport, as well as the San Diego Airport, social distancing as well. TA agents, they have plastic in between themselves. They have you spaced out when you're going through security. They wipe everything down. I'm a neat freak and I like cleanliness, and this is my dream. I'm like, why couldn't they do this all the time? Like, places have never been this clean, and I am here for it.
That's true. And I don't know if you noticed it, Fahren, but in May, when we did do that trip back home, the airport was like a ghost town. Like I felt like I was stuck in some movie almost, because it was like I would be like one of maybe 10 people in the terminal, you know what I mean? And it was just, the security line was maybe 10 minutes. It was just, nobody was traveling. So that was actually probably, like you're saying, the safest that I had felt traveling in a while.
Absolutely.
Nobody. It's different.
And Briana, both of you have actually left the country this year and traveled. So describe that experience, Briana, just being in the airport and leaving the country, and then even going to another country, and how they were dealing with COVID-19.
Yeah, I would say same scenario. I think this Thanksgiving holiday and leading up to Christmas is when travel is getting busier. But at the point in time where I was out of the country and my sister was out of the country, travel still wasn't at normal levels, not anything close to it. So everybody is taking extra precautions. And with travel, a lot of it I found is personal responsibility. So when I'm traveling, I'm being extremely responsible, right? Like staying to myself before the trip. Okay, taking all of my precautions, going through the airport and transportation and things like that. And then when I get back, staying by myself, just to make sure that I'm not getting sick and that I'm not getting anybody else sick. And then the particular country that I went to actually had a much better grip on the coronavirus than we do here in the US. So, and it was, the entire place was outdoor. We were at the beach the majority of the time. We weren't inside. So personal responsibility is really key. I think if you do want to travel and if you do want to go somewhere, which at this point is against CDC recommendations, and I think at this point, obviously my sister and I are both staying put. But if you do want to travel, if you need to see your family, if it's something that you're dead set on doing, you really do yourself a favor just by being as responsible as possible.
Absolutely.
If you're just now joining us, I'm Algenon Cash. You are locked in. Also locked in with us today is Briana and Fahren Conner, two sisters. You probably recognize Briana's voice from WXII, Channel 12 News, where she's a news anchor, and her sister Fahren Conner is a small business owner and fashion designer who's based out in San Diego, California, almost on the other side of the world here for us little folks here in North Carolina. So both of you are talking about how you have traveled this year. All right, so fast forward, we get into the holiday season. Y'all make the decision that you're not going to travel or reconnect as a family. What changed? What made that decision?
My dad.
I mean, they laid it out. Mom and dad laid it out. They were like, listen, we're not doing this. And when Fahren went out of the country earlier on, when things were still kind of flat, like we hadn't hit that spike like we're in now. When she went out of the country, my parents actually went with her and her boyfriend and their family. But I think we're really being cognizant of where things are at right now. And the fact that, you know, they're in that, our parents are in that high risk group, solidly in that high risk group. So we're listening to the experts right now who are saying it's just not safe. Now, I know in North Carolina, and I don't know what the circumstances in California, but our Department of Health and Human Services has put out some guidelines, kind of like I was mentioning it. If you just if you really need to be with your family, if you really are just dead set on gathering, there are some things that they want you to do. And you know, every family is going to make this decision for themselves. But if you and your family do gather, I encourage, you know, y'all to look up those recommendations and look up those guidelines and do everything you can to protect yourself, because whereas families value Thanksgiving and families value Christmas, we certainly don't want this to be our last Thanksgiving altogether or our last Christmas altogether because someone has gotten sick and taken out by this virus.
You know, there's a new phenomenon emerging. They're called Zoomaladays. So it's a play on the word Zoom and holidays, and people have sort of smashed that together. But you know, all jokes aside, I do think more and more families are looking at what we call virtual family time during this holiday season. I've read some articles where there are from families that are literally they are in distant locations, but they are getting together for dinner. They're going to have the tablets and the computers going through Zoom, and it's supposed to, you know, feel and look like a collective family dinner. Has there been any conversation in the Conner family about a Zoomala day during this season?
Yes. So Christmas might be a Zoomala day. I'm hoping it's not, but our dad has put out, we will look at the numbers post Thanksgiving and see what happens and then make a decision.
And for Thanksgiving, we will certainly get together virtually. I think what's been something that's been really unique about this moment that we've never faced before, right, is that we're all learning how to use this technology and we're all figuring out that we can be together without actually physically being together. So our grandmother in Tulsa, right? So you have Fahren and I on the coast, parents in the middle in Texas, and then right above that, we've got our grandmas in Tulsa. But my parents actually took her step by step through how to use Zoom. So we've been able to Zoom with our Grammy, which has been so cool. She's 86. And so that has been, she's got an iPad and she's got her computer, and that has been really cool. So we'll make it work. We will.
No, that's awesome. I know I'm running out of time here. I think a lot of families are having to pivot, just like businesses, and so many individuals are having to pivot this year and do things in a non-traditional way. It sounds like a lot of families, including the Conners and many others around the country, will have to embrace technology this season, and so that's awesome. Before we go, Fahren, you've got a new business that you've been working on this year out in California. You're getting into fashion design. Real quick, tell my audience about what you're doing, and if you've got a website or something where they can go learn more, throw that out there too.
Absolutely. So I'm working on a company called Wilbur & Hazel. I'm designing loungewear for women, currently men TBD, but it's basically, now that we're working from home, a lot of us, it's comfortable clothing you can wear at home, but also wear out. So once we can start traveling again, you can wear it when you travel, but it's very trendy sweatshirts with joggers. So my website is www.wilburnhazel.com. Currently, we have a form set up to where you can enter in your information. That way you can know when we launch. Launch date is set for mid-January.
I encourage my audience to go do that. Briana, you've got something new coming too. You're working on a podcast. When can my audience expect to listen to that first episode?
You know, we've got a target date of January 2021 at this point in time. Working on it. Might get something a little bit sooner just because we're so excited about it, but definitely be on the lookout for that.
No, that's awesome. And again, to all my audience, my friends, thank y'all for supporting us. Thank you for locking in with us. If you do decide to travel, I heard there's over 1 million people that will be traveling this holiday season. If you happen to be in that number, I encourage you to be really safe, wash your hands, social distance, wear the mask, do all the things that the public health experts are telling you. Don't forget, if you don't want to cook this holiday season, J&S Cafeteria, 5835 Summit Drive in High Point, North Carolina, they want to do the cooking for you. And you can get holiday meals to go, pies to go, cakes to go, you name it. So make sure you let them know Algenon Cash sent you. Until next time, y'all stay locked in.
Oh, I was just
Thank
saying,
you so much for that. Yeah, I know.